Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and in this video I'm going to be talking about another part of the Enochian magical system, and that is the tables within the Enochian system known as the Watchtowers, which collectively form the great table of the Watchtowers. I'm going to be talking about how you can understand those tables where the different names of different angels are, the patterns to look for to find all that information, and what the different parts of it mean. So this is something which can be quite intimidating for a person who's just started approaching Enochian magic or Western ceremonial magic. Fortunately, it is something which is quite formulaic, but it is quite complicated, as with everything in Enochian magic. I've been asked to do this video a few times already, actually, and I've put it off simply because there's a lot of information to grapple with, and it needs to be presented in a very systematic fashion or it just becomes confusing. So there's a lot of prep that had to go into this. So hopefully I can make this topic a bit easier to digest, easier to penetrate, and easier to understand. And as we will see, most all of the different elements of the Enochian magical system are, to appropriate Churchill's words, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside of an enigma. Except in the case of Enochian magic, the angels change their mind halfway through their communications with Dee and Kelly about just what the correct enigma is that they should be using to contain the riddle and the mystery. And so to find the right answer to that question, you need to scour Dee's diaries until you find the answer. So fun for the whole family. So hopefully in this video, I'm able to save you the trouble of having to do all of that and presenting the information that you need to know in an accessible form and a easy to watch form about how to work with the great table of the Watchtowers. And I will be using diagrams to help me do that because there's just no way of doing it effectively otherwise. I was thinking of getting the whiteboard up here, but I just simply didn't have the time to fill in an entire table of the great table of the Watchtowers with the individual letters. It was just too time consuming. So I've come up with an alternative, which I think will be quite useful in explaining this. So here goes nothing. Okay, so the diagram that you see in front of you is the great table of the Watchtowers as it was revealed to John Dee and Edward Kelly. This is the version of the table which seems to be the one from which all of the different angelic names and such were derived. And this is what it looks like. It's actually 4 tables in one. So each of the 4 quadrants are an individual table of the east in the upper left-hand corner, the south in the upper right-hand corner, the north in the lower left-hand corner, and the west in the lower right-hand corner. So a watchtower for each cardinal point on the compass, all grouped together, and in the middle there is a central cross, often described as the black cross, which is uniting and holding together the rest of the table. When these tables were revealed to Dee and Kelly, there were a few different features of each of them. The table of the east, the top left one, was given a red colour. The table in the south, in the top right, was given a white colour. The table in the north, in the lower left, was given a black colour, and the table of the west, in the lower right, was given a green colour. And these are the colours, interestingly enough, of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. There's also some theories out there that it's talking about the colours of alchemy. So anyway, we've got these 4 watchtowers, which are 4 tables, which are colour-coded. And in addition to that, each of the 4 tables has a unique symbol at the top of it. So the watchtower of the east has this symbol, the watchtower of the west has this symbol, the watchtower of the south has this symbol, and the watchtower of the north is often depicted as having this symbol, but according to Aaron Leitch, the final symbol of the northern watchtower was actually never properly revealed, and this symbol, or the puff of smoke that sometimes appears in Dee's diaries was just a stand-in for what the true symbol is, and from the fact that this symbol doesn't look like the other three, it implies that it's not the true fourth symbol. But there are quite a few people who still do use this little sun as the fourth symbol. So returning to the tables themselves, this great table of the Watchtowers was revealed to Dee and Kelly towards the end of their angelic communications. It was supposed to be revealed after they engaged in the Jebethel operation, which they never did, but it was revealed to them anyway. And what these tables do, as well as being a representation of the universe, perhaps of the New Jerusalem, as I discussed in one of my previous videos about the secret history of angelic contact. But in addition to that, they also contain a whole series of angelic names, which can be used in magical rituals for various purposes. And so the way that you work with the Great Table of the Watchtowers is by using particular formulae to locate a particular angelic name based on the kind of operation that you want to perform. So what I'm going to do first is I will show you the different levels, I suppose, of this diagram and the way that you can find the different names within each level. And after that, I'm going to give an explanation of what each part of this great table of the Watchtowers is used for, and the varying opinions on what that is, depending on whether it's the Enochian system as it was originally revealed to Dee and Kelly, or the later Golden Dawn variant of it. So this is the most accurate form of the table that I was able to find. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mark this image up to show you the different layers and the different techniques that are used to derive the different angelic names. So the highest of the angelic beings or divine beings that can be called upon using this great table are the names of God. There's 12 names of God in total, and there's 3 in each of the individual 4 tables of the great table to make a total of 12. So to use the table of the south as an example, there are 3 names for us to find here. One is a 3-lettered name, one is a 4-lettered name, and one is a 5-lettered name. So we can find those by tracing along the horizontal line of this central arm of the cross here. The first one there is Mor, the second one, Dial, and then the third one here is Hekutga. And that's how you get the names of God. And you repeat the process for all of the other quadrants, all of the other Watchtower tables. And it's not quite clear what these names are for, other than a kind of initiation into the use of the Great Table, but they seem to be important since they're names of God. And the fact that there's 12 infers that there's some kind of zodiacal symbolism as well. The same way that there's 4 watchtowers infers that they're each associated with one of the 4 classical elements, as well as one of the cardinal points, which is quite common practice in medieval magic at the time. But anyway, that's the 12 names of God. The next level down is again a series of names of God. These ones are known as the peaceful and wrathful names of God. The way that these are derived is by drawing a kind of spiral in the central cross of each of these 4 tables. So let's go to the table of the west this time and find the peaceful and wrathful names of God. You trace like so, which gives you Ra-Gio, and then you can create either the name Ra-Gios, which is a peaceful name of God, or Ra-Giol, which is the wrathful name of God. Let's leave it on the peaceful one. That's better vibes. And so that's how you derive those names, and it will be clear what they're used for in a moment. Of course, there's 4 in total, or actually 8 if you count the peaceful and the wrathful name. In the Golden Dawn version of the Watchtowers, there's also a great elemental king in the middle of each of these crosses, which you create by just completing the spiral like that. So in this case, it would be Ra-Gyosul, who was the great elemental king of water. But that's the Golden Dawn attribution of the elements for each of the Watchtowers. That wasn't part of the original system. So anyway, we have the peaceful and wrathful names of God. And the reason why we need those is so that we can work with the next level down of angelic or divine spirits contained in the Great Table, which is that of the 24 elders, which are the 24 elders of the Book of Revelation, which sit before the throne of God. And the reason why these 24 elders can be called upon is to give counsel on various things. And so we can find those in each of these tables by looking again at the central cross, but rather than drawing a spiral at the center, this time what we want to do is look at the arms of that central cross there. There's 6 different names that we can do by tracing these letters here. So the names of the 6 of the 24 elders in this quadrant of the Great Table can be found by tracing like so. We have here Aok Saif and then Al Totar or Av Totar. These are the first 2. And this line here is sometimes referred to as the linea patris. The next line, also forming part of the vertical arm of the cross, is often referred to as linea filii. And here we get 2 more names, Hut Morda as well as Hippotka. And then finally we get the last 2 names on the horizontal bar, which is known as the linea spiritus sancti. So here we have Abioro, and over here we have Haodspi. And so you times that by 4 for each of the other tables of a direction for a total of 24 elders. And within each individual watchtower table of the 4 watchtower tables, these beings are sometimes described as the 6 seniors. And each of these 24 elders has either a peaceful or a wrathful aspect. And the way that you select either the peaceful or wrathful aspect of each of these beings is with the peaceful or wrathful name of God that appears in the spiral there at the center of the same cross. And for the elders that appear on the linea spiritus sancti, there is also an extra letter that comes into play for the wrathful aspect of that particular elder. So Abioro here becomes Habioro, and Haospi here becomes Ahaospi. And that gets repeated for each of the other 3 tables in the Great Table. So the next level down in this diagram is the quadrants of the quadrants, or the sub-quadrants. So let's move down to this quarter of the diagram. You'll see that there's 4 sub-quadrants, and in the middle of each sub-quadrant there's another cross formation, which looks kind of like a crucifix. These are known as the Calvary crosses. Similar principle to the names of God, which form the spiral in the center of the larger crosses. We have here some angelic names that can then be used to activate another lower layer of angelic names. So in each cross we've got one name that is formed by tracing a line this way. In this case it's Obawa along the horizontal bar, and then down the vertical bar we can trace another name, Vidali. This name along the vertical bar is called forth first to summon a particular angel, and then the name along the horizontal bar is called upon to command that same spirit. And the spirits that we are summoning and commanding using such a name are to be located in these parts of the sub-quadrant. So I'll now explain using a different sub-quadrant so it doesn't get quite so messy. how to find each of those names. So there are some angels that you can find by tracing the 4 panels at the top of the cross. In this case, we get the name Ziza, and then you can get other names by tracing the panels, again, along the horizontal row, excluding the Calvary cross in the center. And then we get a total of 4 more angelic names by doing that. These are the names Ardre, Sisp, Pali, and Akar. And these are all the names of different angels performing specific functions. There is also another part to working with the sub-quadrants where there are some demonic spirits that are hidden within here, which are summoned by doing the reverse in terms of tracing the names to summon and then command the spirits. It's done like so. And then to find the actual demons, it's usually just a couple of the letters, and then there's a third letter which is derived from this central black cross here. But I'm not going to talk any more about that because, as you know, I do not condone summoning demons, except maybe as part of the 4 princes of evil working to confront our own shadow. But even then, you can just go to therapy and do shadow work some other way. No need to summon demons, and they are real entities, and it's just not the sort of thing you want in your life. So we're not going to talk about that anymore. But that gives you an overview of the different ways that you can find angelic names within the Great Table of the Watchtowers. So we've got a lot of different techniques of finding names, but what do these names actually mean? What are the functions of these angelic beings? So in particular, what are the functions of some of the angels within the sub-quadrants? Well, there's a couple of different approaches to this. So let's zoom in on one of the watchtowers as an example, because again, we're going to have a formula employed that gets repeated across each of the 4 quadrants of the Great Table. So we already know about the functions of one order of angels, which is that contained here in the central cross. And that is the functions of the 6 seniors or the 24 elders of giving various forms of counsel. So what about some of these other sub-quadrants? Let's go through them one by one. So first of all, there are a series of angels which pertain to the providing of healing and medicine, which can be found on this part of each quadrant. And the demonic spirits in that part of the diagram are appropriately enough to do with sickness and disease. The names derived from this part of the diagram are ones that give knowledge of precious metals and stones, and the demons are the demons of greed. The names derived from here are names of angels which transform substance from one type into another, and the demons, it's not really known, but presumably it's something similar. Here we have angels and demons related to the 4 elements, and then we go into the fields that are at the top of each Calvary cross. So here we have angels that preside over the mixing of substances. There's only 4 letters there, but these 4 letters can be rearranged in 4 different combinations to give 4 different names, so that's how that works. Here we have angels which can transport various things. Here we have angels that teach one how to be skilled in various crafts involving the hands, or the mechanical arts as they were described in ye old times. And finally, we have angels which are skilled in the discovery of secrets, which are covered by the names of this part of the diagram. And the same is repeated across all 4 quadrants. So those are the original characteristics according to Dee and Kelly's of what these various angels do. But there is another view, which is that of the Golden Dawn, that the way to understand these angels is by attributing them to an element, and then a sub-element, and then there's some other planetary and zodiacal correspondences that we can add to that as well. So in the Golden Dawn's view, each of these sub-quadrants was an element. So each sub-quadrant appearing in the top left was considered to be of the air. Each subquadrant in the top right was considered to be of the element of water. And doesn't that track quite nicely with the political compass? As does the next color. I'm going to use green for the lower left subquadrant. The Golden Dawn attributed this to the element of earth. And then finally, this lower right subquadrant was considered to be of the element of fire. And this gets repeated for each of the 4 quadrants. And then you can zoom that out so that each of the larger quadrants has elemental attribution following the same pattern. So that within the great table of the Watchtowers, you have in each subquadrant a element with a sub-element. So the air, the air of fire, the air of water, and so on. And then further down, when you're looking in the fields surrounding the cavalry crosses, that's where other kind of planetary and other attributions start to come into it. But why did the Golden Dawn decide that they were going to choose this elemental attribution for each of the 4 subquadrants or quadrants of the Great Table? Well, it's because they saw that there was a cardinal point of each of the 4 tables making up the Great Table, and so they had their own idea about, in the microcosmic world, what the corresponding element was to each cardinal point, and so they divvied up the elemental attributions that way. But you might have noticed something, which is that in order for that to work, these 2 need to be flipped on the Great Table of the Watchtowers. And the reason for that was because the Golden Dawn were following a second version of the Great Table of the Watchtowers, known as the Reformed Table of Raphael, which the angel Raphael revealed very late in the piece in the Enochian communications, which may have been intended as a corrected version of the Great Table, or may have just been revealed for a particular purpose. There's different opinions about that. But anyway, that's the reason why the Golden Dawn have gone with the layout of the Great Table that they have. But the use of elemental attributions and planetary attributions is unprecedented before the Golden Dawn comes along and makes those attributions. With the exception, of course, of these subquadrants where the green circle is angels related to the 4 elements specifically. So that is the Great Table of the Watchtowers explained, and all of the different angels that you can find and where and what they represent explained. That's pretty complicated. That's all the different names that you can find in the Great Table of the Watchtowers. There's also more names on top of that that are hidden within the Great Table, which are the names of the 91 parts of the earth, which also relate to another part of the Enochian system, that of the 30 ethers, but that is too much material for one video, so I will talk about the 91 parts of the earth in another video. And if you want to check out more about the different parts of the Enochian magical system, you should go check out my Enochian playlist. I'm going to leave some links, some affiliate links in the description below for good books that you can get to understand more about the Great Table of the Watchtowers and Enochian magic more generally. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel to support my work, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will actually notify you when I post new videos. And if you want to support me further, hit join or thanks down below. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.